Please rise for a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I call this meeting of Independent School District 544 to order. Clerk, will you establish a quorum for us, please?
Yes. Sherman Carlson here, Melanie Cole.
Here.
Daryl Tunson.
Here.
Blaine Danielson.
Here.
Jeff Foreman.
Here.
Matthew Lemke.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. We need to approve the agenda. There was just a few changes this afternoon with some acknowledgements. With those changes, can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to acknowledgements, we want to say congratulations to Catherine Anderson for being awarded a scholarship to attend the 2016 National Jump Start Educators Conference on November 5th through the 7th in Dallas, Texas, through the Minnesota Jump Start Coalition. Congratulations to Morgan Wolzak, who was accepted to be a member of the 2016-17 Minnesota Youth Council. Morgan will work with the other 36 council members as official youth advisors to the Minnesota legislature as part of the Minnesota Youth Council Legislative Committee. And then a sincere thank you to the following for their donation to the Fergus Falls Schools. Kiwanis Club of Fergus Falls for their donation of $200 for the purpose of providing books at Adams School. Sue Moore for her donation of $422.33 for library books in memory of her husband, Mark Moore, to the Adams School Library. Service Food for their donation of $375 for the purpose of funding the Skippy John Jones play for McKinley School students. Victor Lundeen Company for their donation of $125 for the purpose of funding the Skippy John Jones play for McKinley School students. Joshua and Sarah Scholl for their donation of $100 towards classroom supplies in Mr. Swenson's room and $200 towards classroom supplies in Ms. Hanneman's room at Cleveland School. And I'd also just real quickly just want to say a few thank yous that weren't on here, but just for Outer Pride Night and to Renee Erickson and the varsity and JV volleyball team. They were at the Carnival Games, and if they didn't do that, Outer Pride Night couldn't take place. And they do just such a wonderful job. And we were thinking about that. A lot of those students probably went to it as kids, about 11 years ago. So, and they did a wonderful job. Karma Carlson, who is my face paint maker. She does a wonderful job, which is always very important for your maroon and gold. The Fergus Falls Fire Department for bringing and operating the House of Fun. Roy Anderson for setting up the sound system. Shopko and Walmart for their donation to the Outer Pride Night. Life Church for their games that they donated. The MAC PTO for bringing the otter. And we had some 7th graders that helped us out. And that was Clyde Hendrickson and Caleb Watkins. And Sean Anderson and the custodians for their help with this event. It was just a great community event, and it was great for 544 Education Foundation. They sold out of tacos in a bag, which is always good on something what you're trying to do as a fundraiser. So, and to cap it all off, the Otter football team beat Detroit Lakes, which was great. So, thank you to all those people.
Time out.
Yes.
And then the driving force, Matt Lemke. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Moving on to reports. We have student test data from Terry Thompson.
Okay, this is an annual summary report, mostly about our Minnesota comprehensive assessments. And you should have a colored spreadsheet, and we'll talk first about the top page that's about math. As you look on here, anywhere you see a blue box, those are areas where our local school district exceeded what the state average was. So if you look in the columns on the far left, it's 2016. For example, you can see that at Cleveland School, our 3rd graders 74% of them were proficient, meaning 74% of them were scoring where the state would expect students to be by the end of third grade. They're meeting state standards. And across the state, there were 68% of students who met that definition. So we had 5% higher than the state average. And that's how this whole document is set up. You'll notice that in our brick and mortar schools, it's blue, 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 blue. And then for the IQ Academy, we've got some discrepancy there that we need to work through for improvement for there, as well as in our area learning center, we're not meeting the state average as well. But when we average all of those sites in all together, at the bottom line, you'll see that our district is equal to the state. So I think that's something to be proud of. We always want to be better than the state, but we are producing there. I will say generally, the math strand where we show more weakness than the other strands would be in algebra, and that would be true across most of the grade levels. There's just a tiny bit less performance in the area of algebra. Our students seem to perform quite highly year after year in the area of data, understanding data and using data. We did have a training about a week ago for elementary teachers in our curriculum, and she was able to offer some ideas to shore up our K-6 curriculum. I will say we've had that curriculum for many years, and the further we get away from implementing a new curriculum, the more diluted it becomes and people start drifting a little bit. So it was good to have that training to shore that up. And she reminded us of some things that we need to be careful to carry out. The state is delaying their review of math standards for another year on their calendar. So we really won't have new state math standards for about 5 years. And I think we prefer not to buy new curriculum ahead of the state coming out with new standards. So we're going to try to use what we have and do it with as much integrity as we can, even though it's getting quite outdated. It still does address those standards. Then on the next page, this is about the reading MCA test. And this page is set up the very same. You'll notice that our students at Cleveland School did better than the state in all those areas. At the Kennedy School, we had a really positive growth with our 10th graders that showed up 16% above the state. I really can't explain that other than I think it is a really strong group of students at that grade level. Grade 7 and 8 were a little below the state, about 5% below of what we would expect there. In reading, there are 2 strands. One of them is literature and the other is informational text. Our students typically score stronger in literature and a little weaker in informational text. We do not have any direct reading classes in our district after grade 6, other than for special ed. And the expectation is that teachers in all subjects will pick up particular reading detail that fits with their class. There are reading and language arts standards for social studies, science, and subjects related to technology at the secondary level. So we are constantly encouraging teachers to do reading that is specific at their grade level there, and we're expecting them to do more writing because there is a strong correlation between the amount of writing that students do and their reading. And then we see the same pattern here again with the Area Learning Center and the IQ of not performing at state level. But when you move to the bottom, the district as a whole, which includes all of our students in all of those sites and school types, we are performing 4% above the state. Our science scores are strong, and if you look historically, they have been in our brick and mortar schools again. Science is an overall strength. The district 8% ahead of the state overall, and still needing some attention at the Area Learning Center and IQ. Then we have the ACT test. This is college and career type test, typically taken by students who are juniors and seniors. This report is for the students who graduated in 2016. We had those students take the test as juniors. That was a new requirement coming out in our state, and this is reporting on them as seniors. And it would also include the tests that those students chose to do independently outside of the school day. You'll see quite a bit of blue there for 2016. Just 0.3 difference between our student performance and the state student performance. I will say that there are 18 states who require all students to take the ACT test. I shouldn't say require, they provide the test to all students. And we are one of those 18, rather new to join that group. And of those 18, our students in Minnesota scored the highest of those 18 states. Minnesota did lose its first ranking in the nation, though, but it's held for many years. And that was expected because we tested all students. It wasn't a choice for those who wished to take the test. Down in the bottom right-hand corner there, you'll see some more blue, and those are areas where our district was stronger than the state. Overall, students who take more challenging classes tend to score, they score better all over on the ACT. So we do want to encourage students to continue to take challenging courses as they move through high school. And then the last page here, this is reporting on our primary age students, kindergarten, first, and second grade. We locally choose to give a test called Measures of Academic Performance. It's a test that we purchase from the Northwest Education Association. It's used nationally by many, many schools. And you'll see a lot of blue there as well. They compare our student performance initially with national norms for many years. Hundreds of thousands of students take this test, and our scores here, you'll see they're over 100% because our students meet what would be expected and they exceed it as a group. Of course, there are individual students who don't, but as a group, our district has had a very strong showing with MAP testing. This is a computerized test. We give 3 times a year, and we use it to benchmark students' performance in the fall and then measure growth winter and spring. We choose to use reading and math tests. We don't buy the science test, but they do have one. Today was our first day of MAP testing in the district for this fall, and it seemed to go just perfectly. It takes about 2 times in the computer lab for the little ones to complete the reading, and then 2 times again for math. They're in there about 20 minutes, 25 minutes. It's a test that levels to the child's performance. So if they get questions right, one after the next, the test gets more challenging. If they get them wrong, it backs off a little bit, and it tries to tighter to find the exact spot where a child is able to perform and ready for challenge. Questions?
Questions from the board?
I'll just add one thing. So this document is part of the teacher evaluation that we've adopted about 4 years ago now. And so 65% of a teacher's evaluation is based on the principal's observation, including student engagement, and 35%, and this is state required, 35% is student data. So we have K2 is the MAP test, and then 3 through 8, and then the high school is MCAS, and then the ACTs, and I think I got them all in there. So all of those, and we are in the proficient range. So something like NWA, where we're 120% plus above, that would be distinguished. Some of the other ones are in that proficient, lower or higher. And so as a guide that we did as a group, a teacher evaluation group, this would be in the proficient range. So on a 1 through 4, where it's unsatisfactory is a 1, and then basic, and then proficient and distinguished, we're at a little over a 3 is where we're at on this.
Questions for Carrie? Carrie, I just have one question. Do you know, there's been some concern from some school districts about kids opting out of testing for the MCAs. Do we have that kind of concern at all?
We have we have a small amount of that.
Okay.
It's not significant. We are required to deliver these tests, and as with all things, if parents have another idea, we honor parent requests. But it really isn't a significant issue in our district. At the same time, we are required to test 95% of our students.
Any other questions for Carrie? Thank you, Carrie.
Next, we have our marching band, Philadelphia and Washington DC trip,
July 2017, Scott, come wrong.
Yeah, coordination.
That's why I was a little late too. I had to run pick my son up and then change my coat out of pajamas. It was pajama day today, so. And it's more than just the Philadelphia thing. I just kind of thought it would be good to maybe make an annual thing out of telling everyone what's going on in the band program. And so I want to thank you for having me on the agenda tonight, and just again address some things on the happenings of the band program here in Fergus Falls. I'm sure that you understand the support this community has for music education is unparalleled. And so, like, in conjunction with the Fergus Falls Concert Association, the Wind Ensemble has the opportunity to perform with one of the world's premier brass ensembles coming up here in October. The Dallas Brass is phenomenal. I should almost send you links to their stuff. I encourage you to be season ticket holders if you want for the Concert Association to attend. I know a guy that sells tickets too, so they're down in my office. The Wind Ensemble will be performing a piece titled American Tableau with the Dallas Brass on October 24th in the auditorium. And there's also going to be a chance to set up a clinic session. Dean Monkey and I will be working on that schedule and seeing what we can do for the other kids in the band program to have a one-on-one experience with this group. And some other things going on. The Fergus Falls Band Boosters and Bemidji State University have teamed up to offer an event for Wind Ensemble students. We're calling it the first annual Band Day. And it's happening on Saturday, November 5th. Mr. Scott Guidry is the BSU band director in Bemidji, and he's phenomenal to work with. And I threw this idea by him to have some real focused time for the top group to do some work with a collegiate level person. And then he thought, maybe he could bring a couple of his faculty with to do breakout sessions, a flute player, trumpet player. Well, it turns out, as he told his faculty that he was coming to Fergus Falls, they all want to be here. And so he's bringing 9 to 10 of his faculty here to work with our students on that day. Schmidt Music is also bringing their pro shop, which is people that have, some of them, doctorate level performance degrees with instruments to show the kids, and it's really going to be a unique experience. We're hoping that it is a big success, and we're going to try to offer it to more than just one band, but we thought we'd start small this year and not get overwhelmed with the details. In November, we have a saxophone player coming to perform with the high school band program. He once won the Geneva World Saxophone Competition, and yes, that's a thing. He's an incredible performer. He's charismatic and energetic. He teaches at Concordia College in Moorhead, so he's nearby. We're going to perform one of his pieces with Varsity Band and Concert Band together, and then he's writing a brand new piece that Wind Ensemble is going to premiere with him. It's a version of Hey Jude, so that's pretty exciting. This last performance group we have coming in is a big deal, and as if the other ones weren't. But in the 90s, the artist Prince put together a funk jazz group, a quintet of 2 saxophones, 2 saxophones, 2 trumpets, and a trombone. And they toured with him, and they made it really big on their own. With the help of Schmidt Music and some local sponsoring groups, we were actually able to have them here, and I cannot tell you, each of these musicians is world class. And again, they're going to get to work. Our students they're going to get to work with our students, and our students will get to work with them. And that's in April. Just a side note, this has been a group that transformed my musical career. It was one that when I was young and heard them, I was like, holy cow! I didn't know the instruments could sound like that. And they are. We worked with the trombone player before, and he's just such an excellent educator as well. The last bit here is what is actually on the agenda, and we've been asked to perform at the 2017 Philadelphia Independence Day Parade. The parade route travels through the historic district of Philadelphia, retracing the steps of our founding fathers from more than 2 centuries ago, including passing by Independence Hall where the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution were signed. After some time in Philadelphia, the band would be going to travel to DC and see all the sites that are there. We are anticipating the trip cost will be $675 or under per student. The pressure of raising $90,000, like when we've done the inaugural parade in the past, pressure of raising $90,000 in 25 days is gone on both the community and families. It's a much longer window of time to fundraise. And we're also not looking, we weren't in the inaugural parades ever either looking to do 100%. The community just kind of rallied behind it. We're going to look to just supplement family costs. And the kids will have the opportunity to do that through our normal fundraising. They do grocery receipt program with service food and our magazine sales in November and in January, our frozen food. And also the boosters have some things that they do. We have some partnerships with like Taco John's, and we've done things with Don Pablo's and Papa Murphy's, and we'll probably put our, send the kids to Philadelphia on those too to give it some, to give it a name, I guess. Yeah, so that's that portion of things. And I guess I'd like to finish by saying a big thank you to the community. It's nice to have this forum to do this. I say it to people individually all the time. I say it at our concerts, but to have maybe a wider audience with the TV viewing area. I can't tell you how different this community is when it comes to music education. I've never been in a community like this, and I know that most of my colleagues on the state level do not have the kind of community support that we have. They are people that feel passionately about the presence of quality music education in our classrooms. And they have supported and defended that with words, actions, and dollars. And I've been so impressed and blessed to be in this community and see that happen. So, and I believe you have a tentative itinerary in front of you. So I guess if there's any questions on any of that stuff.
Any questions from the board? Scott, I just have one question.
Yeah.
When it says a draft, you mean you might change this like a few?
The timeline will
items or
be,
something
yeah,
like
the
that,
timeline should be the same. I like the word tentative,
Sure.
Because like we'll send out a marching band calendar with the kids here pretty soon too. That'll have those dates, and until we get into the winter and really know. I know when the company that I use to book things, it'll be like we're not doing this thing on that day. We're going to do it on this day because of it's full or something. So it's nothing major.
Sure.
Yeah. And we also change things for cost. Because if we set that 675 mark and for whatever reason it starts creeping above that, we have to cut some things to keep it under. But that should be an issue. DC is a cheap place to be. Everything's free.
Any other questions from the board? Thank you. We have the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum Washington, D.C. trip on April 4th, 2017. Kristen Toodle's here to talk about that.
Well, good evening, and thank you for, placing me on the board agenda as well. I am here today to ask for permission to take some Area Learning Center students on a trip to the Holocaust Museum in the Washington, D.C. area. The trip is sponsored by the Jewish and Community Relations Council for Minnesota and the Dakotas. Casey Holcomb and myself took students on this trip about 5 years ago. And the cost we estimate with hotel stay and transportation to cost about $600 per student. The cost for the 1 day to the Holocaust Museum and the airfare is $425. It is too much to do that trip in 1 day. I tried that before, and thank goodness for an ice storm because we had to stay when we returned. So we would need to spend 1 night in the Twin Cities and then drive back the following morning. The trip is, the airplane is chartered by the Jewish Community Relations Council, and then we take off from Hubert Humphrey. You leave at 7 a.m. You land in D.C. at about 10:30 a.m. and view the museum, the Holocaust Museum. And then after that, I have planned that we're going to go to another Smithsonian museum. There are 2 other chaperones, Judah Burlingame and Ethan Johnson, that will be accompanying students on the trip. And then we plan to split up and offer 3 different options of the different Smithsonians that students can visit. The last time we went, we took pedicabs then and went around the whole 7 block square area, visiting the other sites. And so that is the plan for the day, and then you fly home that evening. We left at about, I think we took off like at 9:30 p.m. and you land back in the Twin Cities right around midnight. So yes, it's one jam-packed filled day. To date, we've had 22 students express interest in participating in the trip. The last time we did this, we had about 15, but only 3 were able to raise the funds necessary to participate. So we hope that we have a longer window, although it is a short window, but we have a little bit longer window of time to help raise funds to supplement the costs. And I have reserved 10 spots for students. There's also an academic expectation, as well as a behavioral and attendance expectation to participate in the trip. Any questions?
What was the date again?
April 4th and 5th.
Do you get any luck with the community supporting the cost for the kids? Or do you do fundraisers?
Yes, we do, the usual fundraisers, the service food receipts, selling different items, exchanging services, for donations. And we have solicited other trusts and other entities too in the community for support as well. So.
Would the prom dress sale go for this, or is that earmarked for something else?
The prom dress sale is earmarked for the MAP Stars
Okay.
group, and actually it doesn't raise a whole lot of money. We have a plethora of dresses. They're all $5 to $10 a piece, so that maybe raises $100 a year, maybe.
Oh, okay.
So it's not a
It's more
big-
like community service.
It is.
If the number goes up, Kirsten, you have 10 students for 3 staff, would that ratio change? If you have more, you just stay with 3 staff and it's
Yeah.
whatever, okay.
Yeah.
And then is the plan like every couple of years, or what would you think?
Yeah, I
Because
would
you've
say
done
every
this
3 years.
3 years,
I would
okay.
say every 3 years. Just takes so much energy to fundraise. And most of our students need to fundraise the majority of that cost. So,
Any other
Thank
questions? Thank you. Elementary Principal Scott Colbeck, Adams and McKinley.
Good evening, everybody. What's being passed around right now is just something I wanted to share with you. Our PTO board did something this year that I just thought was really nice, and I think was appreciated by our staff at McKinley and Adams and Cleveland. But you can see who our board members are of this year's parent-teacher organization. Kelsey Fellstuhl is our president, and Jen Whitted, our vice president. Abby Kwopinski is our secretary, and then Lori Larson is our treasurer. So I think I know this was sent out to all of our staff in the 3 elementary schools. We learned a little bit about who our board members are, and a little bit about their families and their children in our schools. So we had our first PTO meeting last week at Cleveland School, and this year's PTO is trying something a little bit different. Instead of meeting at 6:30, we're meeting at 5:30. And based upon our first meeting, it looks like that hour earlier meeting time is working, because we really had a nice turnout. All of our families in our elementary schools are automatically considered members of the PTO. Certainly not all of them attend the meetings, but we had a very good first meeting. It went from 5:30 to 6:15. The goal is always to be done within an hour. Our first meeting was 45 minutes. And we meet in the Cleveland Library, and we meet once a month. And our PTO is there to support our students and our faculty and staff and the families of our elementary schools. Just to give you just one example of what they do, parent-teacher conferences are coming up, and our PTO will feed all of our teachers during parent-teacher conferences. They'll provide food at McKinley, at Adams, at Cleveland, and even out at the Prairie for those teachers there. So that's just one nice thing that our PTO does to show appreciation to the teachers in our elementary schools. We have a book fair coming up this week at McKinley School on Thursday. This year's book fair is a little bit unique in that it's not sponsored by our PTO. In years past, our PTO has sponsored a book fair, usually about 2 a year, a fall and a spring book fair. This year, their efforts are more towards a new fundraiser that they're going to give a try this year. So our teachers at McKinley School decided to hold and host and do all of the work for their own book fair. So this will be put on by our kindergarten teachers and 2 of our first grade teachers. What's neat about this book fair is the hours are from 3 to 7. So families who want to show up and pick up their child from school can just stay there with their child and attend the book fair. Some of the proceeds from that book fair are going to go to help cover some of the cost of bringing our kids from McKinley School to a performance at a Center for the Arts on October 6th. That's the play Skippy John Jones. If you're unfamiliar with Skippy John Jones, as I was until a couple weeks ago, apparently Skippy John Jones is a character in a book who is, I think, a cat who thinks he's a dog, a chihuahua, not a chihuahua, as I was practicing before the meeting tonight. So Skippy John Jones, $5 though to go to that. And that's a hardship for a lot of our families. So here's what the teachers at McKinley School decided to do. They started talking to some area businesses, and I think you recognized some of them earlier tonight, with some gifts to help defray the cost. They're also using some proceeds from the book fair. They're also using some of their adopted class or business partner money. So we got the cost down to $1 per student, which we're asking families then for a $1 donation. And that letter went out. And actually, we're starting to have some families send $5 back. Just say, hey, here's $1 for my child and $4 more if you have some children in your classroom that aren't able to come up with that. So just wanted to thank our teachers at McKinley for their work to make this happen. Because we do feel uncomfortable going out and asking all of our families for $5 to attend this performance. Wanted to tell you a little bit about our staff meeting last week at Adams School. This was on Wednesday the 21st. We purposely held our staff meeting on the 21st because it was a year ago on September 21st where we had that very difficult, tragic day at Adams School where we had learned of the passing of one of our first grade teachers, Peggy Peterson, who had been on leave for a while. She was, hopefully trying to get better. And then that same day, our school custodian, Mark Moore, collapsed. So that's a day that we'll never forget at Adams School. So it was good to gather together after school and have our staff meeting, which was just a little bit of business, but mostly about just remembering Mark. His wife, Sue, is a second grade teacher there. She talked to us a lot, had some photos and video to share. We had some treats, but probably the neatest thing was Sue was presented a book of a lot of memories that staff took the time to write about Mark, their stories about Mark. That was put together by one of our Sunshine Committee members, Pam Sherman, and then we were able to present that to her. We also went outside and as a group just released balloons. Just kind of ended our meeting that way. We're releasing a bunch of balloons into the sky and then walking back in for some refreshments. So it was just a good day to come together and be together that day. And then lastly, I just wanted to share with you what happened last week on a Thursday night. Our McKinley staff, our kindergarten teachers, had what they call a McKinley kindergarten night at the public library. And that was from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. Our kindergarten teachers sent home with their students a library card application, which was handed out at school. Families could show up to the open house that night at the public library. Their child then could receive their library card. There were about 40 kindergarten students who showed up. This is the second year that our kindergarten teachers have held this night in conjunction with our public library staff. There was a scavenger hunt. There were probably about 100 people that showed up altogether that came along with the 40 kindergarten students. So just a neat way to collaborate with our public library and get our young kids going with these library cards, and then the scavenger hunt, helping them just to get to know and become familiar with the public library. So that's what I have to share with you this evening, and I can entertain any questions from any of you.
When's that McKinley Book Fair again?
It's this Thursday. This Thursday from 3 to 7.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Okay.
Thank you.
Elementary Principal, Tindy Run, Cleveland. Welcome.
Good evening. I just brought along some information highlighting some of the happenings at Cleveland these first few weeks of school. Our third grade classes have continued to do their math and reading switch, and they've all switched now, and so the third graders are getting used to that routine, and they all just magically know right where to go when it's time to switch. So that's just been a really good, positive instructional strategy in meeting the needs of each of those learners. It allows the teachers to do some flexible grouping so that they can plan accordingly for each of those learning groups. Fifth grade band and orchestra rehearsals have taken place now 2 times over. That's a brand new routine for those fifth graders needing to get their instruments and music, get on the bus, come over here and learn where the band rooms are and where to put their belongings. So that has been a successful transition here and back. We have several students interested in music. There are 84 fifth graders participating in band, 49 fifth graders participating in orchestra, and 23 students are in both orchestra and band. So on those days, or for those students, on days 1 they participate in band rehearsal, and on days 5 they participate in orchestra rehearsal. So they get the experience of that large group practice time with each of those groups. Fifth grade choir is also something new a new opportunity for fifth graders, and we have the largest group that we've had ever. There are 38 students showing up on Thursday mornings to rehearse with Joni Wasberg in the choir room. So she's really excited about that, and it's always fun too to get those young male voices in the choir and see that interest grow. And then in fourth grade orchestra, we had a large number of students excited for this opportunity, and there are 108 students that were here this past Thursday morning with their violins and cellos in hand, and they fill half of the gym at Cleveland. So that was a new experience for those kids as well. And for the orchestra and the fifth grade choir, we always say a great big thank you to those parents, because those kids need their parents to get them there each and every morning, and that takes some planning and dedication to be there and ready to start rehearsal at 7:30 a.m. On Thursday morning. So good things to get that first go under our belts. Today I stopped down at the Cleveland gym to see the heart rate monitors in action, and it was really incredible to see that the kids how they were working together. Today they were kicking a ball to one end of the gym and then back again, and the kids that were waiting in lines were very in tune to their their square up on the screen that was monitoring their heart rates, and several of them were very motivated to stay in motion. Some were just doing jumping jacks, some were jogging in place, or just hopping from one foot to the other, but they were very, very tuned into what color their square was up on the screen. And so it was really neat to see that motivation to stay in the zone and the feedback that they were getting. So pretty neat to see. The last 2 weeks, the 4th and 5th grade sections had their experience with duck banding. And that's a great, really rich experience that goes hand in hand with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Partnership. They have all hands on deck out there, and they have captured ducks throughout the morning or overnight, I guess, and have those ducks ready for each of the groups of children to hold and measure and see up close. They collect some data on that. They've learned how to band the duck, and so there's adult support there, and the kids are just, it's so real and so rich and really kind of emotional all at the same time. And in the very end, when they're done doing all their observing of that duck, there's the release moment. And we try and capture each of the groups releasing the duck that they have been checking out and observing. So very neat experience each and every year. This coming week, our 3rd grade sections will have their first visit out to Prairie Wetlands Learning Center. They do a lot of discovering when they're there, and they usually get to kind of be the duck detective, and they're looking at clues and answering some questions in an effort to discover one of the prairie animals or plants or the like. So it's a great introduction for our 3rd graders with those visits out at Prairie Wetlands Learning Center. Also, tomorrow we have Paige Borst, a medical student from the University of Minnesota Duluth, coming to visit our 5th grade sections. She is going to be presenting information on brain awareness. She'll talk about the importance of rest to have an awareness, nutrition, the effects that electronic devices have on our attention, and how to maybe disengage from those when it's nearing bedtime, so that you can fall asleep more readily and get a good night's rest. But it's a really good information, and she's geared it all towards that 5th grade group, and we're all really excited to hear what she presents tomorrow.
What times are those?
Her first presentation is at 10 o'clock at Prairie Wetlands Learning Center.
Oh, out there.
Yep. She'll do 2 presentations there, then come to Cleveland for the Cleveland-based classrooms, and then in the afternoon she'll revisit the 2 afternoon sections at Prairie. So she has 6 presentations she's doing tomorrow.
Thank you.
Yep. And then on Thursday of this week, we have several 4th, 5th, and 6th graders who are participating in the cross-country program. And on Thursday of this week, they will get to run in their first big cross-country race out at Pebble Lake Golf Course. So they are very excited about that, and I think it's going to be a beautiful day for them to get that first race under their belt. They run a 1-mile race, I'm understanding, so looking forward to cheering them on as well. Any questions from?
I just have a comment or a compliment for you and your staff. I know the transporting to and from the prairie can be challenging at sometimes, but as a father of a 4th grader who started playing the violin here recently, I wasn't actually sure how that went to get how the students got from orchestra out to the prairie, but that went very well. So just a compliment for staying on top of things and getting them where they need to go. It's appreciated as a parent. So.
That's good. And along those lines, the students really have been cooperative. When we load the shuttle bus to go to Prairie in the mornings, we put our Prairie science class students in the back of the bus and fill from the back, and then the OLV students are seated, and then the Morning Sun students. So they kind of learn where to strategically sit on those buses, so that when we stop at each of those schools, they can just easily get off and not climb over each other. So I pass this on to the students and just thank them for their cooperation too. They really do a nice job of running their routine. So thank you.
Our next report's not on the agenda, but Superintendent Ness.
Yes, Dean Mackey is recovering nicely. I think he'll be back in the office tomorrow from his knee surgery. But this is homecoming week, so they talked about pajama day. They've got lots of different dress-up days, and it all is the accumulation. The big event on Friday is, Maroon and Gold Spirit Day. There's home activities throughout the week, but Friday's the big day. They do the Ironman volleyball, where the junior boys take on the senior boys in volleyball, and then the Powder Puff football, where the girls play football. And then we have the parade is at 2 o'clock. It's the standard parade. We just line up here, head down Freiburg and Lincoln. So nothing has changed there. The biggest change, if you're coming to the game and if you come at 7 o'clock, you'll be there a little bit after halftime. So the game is changed to 6 p.m. So you have to make sure, and the reason for that is because we're playing Roseau, and just as a courtesy to get them home earlier, we're starting the game at 6 o'clock. And that also moves up. The dance is from 8 to 11, I believe. So they're just moving everything up a little bit. So make sure you know that. Some other things we're working on, Career Pathways Bush Grant. We've met twice now. We have United Way is being invited to put in an application for a $500,000 grant. And it's all related to careers and internships, apprenticeships, those types of events. So we're working with West Central Initiative, M-State, and the school district, and they've chosen Fergus Falls because we have United Way and the largest school in the area that we would put in an application for that grant. In our Otter Tail County Collaborative, we have a number of different groups. The focus is typically early childhood. We work on things like truancy, making sure kids get into school. We work on health. Mental health is a big one right now. And then poverty and ACEs, the adverse childhood experiences, working with healthcare officials and lots of people on what can we do to better the experience of our children so they can come in and learn better at the kindergarten level. So you'll hear more about that. Health and safety meeting was last week. Just so you know, that there's been some news out there about testing for lead in your water, and we have done this, but we're on schedule for again this fall. So we'll be testing all of the elementary buildings, and then also spot checking all the way through this building and Roosevelt as well. We have the coming up, in the next few months now, the World's Best Workforce. They've done a number of changes, but in December we'll be reporting on last year. We're always a year behind, but this year we have 12 different components that we have to make sure that we include in next year's plan. So we'll be working through all of that. In the past couple of weeks, we've had Minnesota Rural Education Association, which is a lobbying organization for rural districts, and I serve on that board, and Minnesota School Board Association have meetings in the area, and they're preparing their platform. What should we be working on? Is funding, facilities, all these different things. So these meetings were pretty well attended from the area, and you give input so then they can finalize their legislative platform. And then ESSA is the new NCLB, so Every Child Succeeds Act, Every Student Succeeds Act, and the nearest, everything revolves around the cities, but the farthest out they came was St. Cloud. That's outstate Minnesota, I guess. So I did get on the commissioner's call, and she has a cabin near Perham, so she's going to come up and do another ESSA near to us, so which is good. So that is another avenue that we need to be informed on, and what requirements we'll have to be doing for the federal legislation. But we have a good group that's doing the state committees that are working on all of this, and we just need to be informed and follow through on what we need to do. So that is what I have.
Any questions for Superintendent Ness? Thank you. Moving on to our general consent items, we have the school board minutes of the regular school board meeting held on September 12th, 2016. Personnel, Superintendent Ness.
Yes, we have 2 resignations. Jenny Johnson as a noon hour supervisor, Val Moxis as a cafeteria worker, and then support staff hires. We have Maggie Knorr as a special ed para, Valerie Moxis as the high school secretary, Caitlin Starkey as a noon hour supervisor, and then Trista Kitzman, kindergarten teacher. She is going to be a long-term sub from September 19th through November 30th in a half-time. And if you look at those days over the course of a year, it's a 0.1339 FTE increase in her time. And she, And then we have an agreement between the para-educators and the school board, and that contract was settled in the parameters of all our other contracts. So I recommend approval of those items.
Do we have a motion to approve the general consent items?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? General consent items passed. There is no old business. Moving on to new business, we have the proposed levy for taxes payable for 2017. This is to set it at the maximum amount. Public informational meeting regarding the proposed property taxes and budgets and proposed and final property tax levy is scheduled at 6 p.m. Monday, December 12, 2016 in our community room at Kennedy Secondary School during the school board meeting. With that, I'm going to have Mark go over the proposed property tax.
Just first of all, I'll just go through the process to remind you again, and of course with the new people here. The way the levy system works for school districts and cities and counties and townships is we find out what our levy is going to be here early part of September. We then go through a process of adopting a proposed levy, which then at that point ends up on the truth and taxation statements that come out in November. And then subsequent to that is each of those entities have to have a hearing where the public can come in and give their opinion on the taxes and so forth. After which in December then you have a set period of time where the entity has to adopt that levy. That levy then goes on your tax statements and then gets paid in the months of April, May, I think it is, and October, November, somewhere in that ballpark. For us, this is, or for cities and counties, this is actually for their budget that starts January 17. School districts are 6 months later. So the cities and the counties, they've been working hard on their budget, and now this is filling in the final pieces. Whereas this is just the very first step of something that has to be done for a budget that starts in July. We mentioned about the maximum. The numbers are definitely fluctuating right now as school districts around the state have gotten their information and they're finding errors and so forth. And so we're going through this period where taxes or proposals are bouncing around. Plus, typically, school districts will have referendums, either levy or bond referendums that come up in November on election day. And so the rules of the game are is if you set a dollar amount, you're set to that dollar amount. Whereas if you say the maximum at this stage of the game, then all of those other variations are taken into account. And by the time the tax statement is released, you have some ability to go up or down. With that, I have a one-page sheet that the board has. I'm not sure if the candidates have got it. But overall, our taxes we're proposing here at this current time will be increasing about 2%. The total amount is $6,673,000 plus some change versus $6.5 million last year. It's a $133,000 change. A lot of this levy and the changes is due to a thing called long-term facility maintenance. That is a new thing put in by the state legislature to help with the maintenance of buildings. Very long overdue. Most school districts, or nearly all school districts, haven't had a change in their funding for maintaining their buildings since the early 90s. It started to phase in last year, and it's again being phased in another chunk here with this year. So it's definitely a funding opportunity that the school board will need to consider. There is some state aid applied to it as well. all of these items and levies, if you don't levy for it and there's an aid attached to it, you lose the aid as well. And in most cases, the amount of aid is proportionately higher than the levy. But for every dollar you lose it in proportion as well. So if you have $1 of levy and $4 of state aid to get $5 of revenue, you cut $1, you lose $4, you end up losing $5. So you gotta be careful on how school districts can reduce their levies. Also on this sheet, you'll see the tax rate. That's kind of an arbitrary number that I've been keeping track of over time. There really isn't a tax rate. But you'll see that our tax rate, if you will, is at 32.1 that we're proposing. That number over time has been as high as 56.7. And even back in 8 years ago, that tax rate was at 33.6. So even though the dollar amounts are going up, the amount of tax rate is going down. So the difference is more properties within the school district and so forth to help carry the load and spread that levy out over more properties. So I hope that's enough information for you tonight. If not, you can ask questions after the vote, but I would recommend that we vote the maximum and have these amounts placed on our truth and taxation in November.
So we have a motion to set the levy for tax bills payable for 2017 at the maximum amount. Do we have a motion for that?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 3, we have the school board policy 815, animals in the school.
No,
Oh, did I miss one? Yeah, I did, sorry. Excuse me. 2000, okay, there we go. Number 2 first, 2016-17 fundraiser requests. Do we have a motion to approve those?
Also moved.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Jeff, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Now item number 3, school board policy 815, animals in the school. Do we have a motion to approve that policy?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Discussion on this?
I can give an update. Sometimes life happens, so you have to have a policy. And as we had a student come in with an animal to the school district, we did some research. We could only find 2 policies. Moorhead and Morris both have a policy about service animals. It's also therapy dogs, companion animals, comfort animals, I should say. And so we just felt if we are going to have an animal in school to service the students' needs in some way, everyone needs to have clear communication, and that's what a policy is about. How is the animal taken care of? Where should it be? All the things related to having an animal in school to service, for any type of service for the student, and that's what this policy addresses.
Any other discussion? All those in favor of the policy say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 4, we have an additional 2 special education paraprofessional positions based on student enrollment. The student enrollment is dictating the need for additional special ed paras at our Cleveland school. With that, do we have a motion to approve this?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
I'll take Blaine. Any discussion?
I just said based on, student enrollment and then also individual education plans, these were deemed, Shannon and Shannon Erickson, Executive Director of our Special Ed Co-op, along with Principal Rund, are recommending this.
Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 5, we have a trip request to the Fergus Falls Marching Band Philadelphia, Washington, D.C. trip of July 2017. Do we have a motion to approve as presented to us?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Sounds like a good opportunity for students.
It does.
Nice that it's not during the school year.
Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 6, we have the school athletic trainer and sports medicine service agreement between the Fergus Falls Independent School District 544 and Lake Region Healthcare Corporation effective 8/1/2016 through FY18. This is a 2-year contract. With that, do we have a motion to approve this?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? I'll just say it's really nice to have a trainer. I know we went for quite a long time not having one, and I know our students use them a lot. So, for athletes, and it's good to have them. So, it's been very much a mutual benefit, so. With that, is there any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 7, we have the Minnesota High School application for dissolution of a cooperative sponsorship of girls' dance team beginning with the 2016-2017 school year. And the reason for this is because they cannot find a coach and they don't have any dancers either.
That would be correct. So there was a co-op with Underwood, Breckenridge, and us for the last 2 years. We haven't had dancers. Other than that, yeah. So, yes, it's unfortunate, but we have a very strong dance program downtown here that takes a lot of our dancers.
So do I...
I move we approve.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 8, we have a 2016-17 collaborative agreement between WCMCA Head Start and the Fergus Falls School District. Do we have a motion to approve this?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion?
And this is an annual agreement that provides services for the students being prepared for school. So this is an agreement that we have signed in the past.
Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. This concludes our regular school board meeting. Our next meeting will be Monday, October 10th at 5 p.m. right here at the Outer Community Room, Kennedy Secondary School. Following this meeting, we will be going into a work session to talk about student data and also review of the elementary building tours. With that, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I'll take blame. And a second from Melanie.
Right on.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.